All right, today we're diving into the story of a company called ShopFast. And this is a fascinating one because they were growing so fast that their own success was about to become their biggest liability.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What happens when your greatest success actually becomes your biggest threat? Every new customer, every single sale, all that incredible growth was actually making them more vulnerable. So, how is that even possible? Well, to get to the bottom of it, we've got to go back to the beginning, right when things really started taking off. So, our story kicks off with ShopFast. They're this booming e-commerce platform, and they are just experiencing absolutely explosive growth. You know, the kind of rocket ship ride every startup dreams about. But their technology, the very foundation of their business, was really starting to creak under all that pressure. So to keep up, they had to make a huge architectural shift. They moved away from their old system, what we call a monolith. Think of it like one giant single application. It was stable, sure, but it was slow to update. Instead, they embraced microservices. They basically broke their platform down into dozens of tiny, independent services that could be updated super quickly and scaled one by one. And from a business perspective, it was a brilliant move. It unlocked incredible speed, but it came with a massive hidden cost.
And that cost? It was their security. You see, their old security model was kind of like a big, strong castle wall around a single city. Simple, effective. But now, they didn't have one city anymore. They had dozens of little villages scattered all over the place. And that old wall? It was suddenly completely useless. It left them wide open. So, problem number one. A massively exploded attack surface. See, each one of those new microservices had its own API, its own entry point. What used to be a single, well-guarded front door was now dozens and dozens of windows, vents, and unlocked side doors. And every single one was a potential way in for an attacker. And then, number two, identity became an absolute nightmare. In this new world, how do you even manage permissions? How do you make sure that user profile service is allowed to talk to the orders service, but under no circumstances can it talk directly to the payment service? It became this incredibly complex web of connections that was just getting harder and harder to control. Next up, you have what's called secret sprawl. And yeah, we're talking about API keys, database passwords, all those critical credentials. They were just scattered everywhere, in config files, hard-coded into the software, spread across hundreds of different containers. It was a total operational mess and really just a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. And finally, there's the human gap. Look, ShopFast's developers were amazing at what they did, building cool features and shipping code super fast. But they weren't security experts. And that meant a single tiny misconfiguration by a completely well-meaning engineer could accidentally expose sensitive customer data to the entire internet. That's the risk they were running. Okay, so faced with this massive security crisis, ShopFast realized they couldn't just keep patching holes. It wasn't working. They had to change their entire philosophy. They needed a whole new foundation for security, one that was actually built for this new, complicated, distributed world. And this became their new guiding principle. Never trust, always verify. So simple, right? But so incredibly powerful. It's a complete 180 from the old way of thinking. Instead of trusting things by default, just because they were inside the network, the new assumption was that nothing and no one could be trusted. Period. And this is the core idea behind what we call zero trust. It completely blows up the whole concept of a safe internal network. With zero trust, it doesn't matter if a request is coming from the outside world or from the server sitting right next door. Every single connection attempt has to prove who it is and prove it has permission for what it's trying to do. Every single time. No exceptions. So, okay, it's one thing to have a new philosophy, right? But how did ShopFast actually build it? How did they put it into practice? Well, they turned this big idea into concrete action by weaving security directly into the very fabric of their platform, creating this kind of multi-layered digital fortress. They focused on 4 key layers of defense. And the idea here wasn't to build one giant, perfect wall. It was about creating these overlapping fields of protection so that if one layer somehow failed, another one was right there to catch it. So let's break down what they did, layer by layer. All right, layer 1, they made all their internal communication totally unreadable to outsiders. They did this using something called a service mesh, which automatically enforced what's known as MTLS. Now, in simple terms, it just means that every service had to show a kind of digital ID to any other service it wanted to talk to. Once they were verified, all their communication was encrypted. So even if an attacker did manage to get inside the network, all the data they could see would just be complete and utter gibberish.
Okay, for layer 2, they put a guard on the main entrance. They used an API gateway, which basically acted like a single, really smart bouncer for all the traffic coming from the outside. It was checking IDs, validating requests, and, crucially, shielding all of their back-end services from any direct exposure to the public internet. Nothing got past the front door without being checked.
For layer 3, they went after that secrets sprawl problem we talked about. All those hard-coded passwords and API keys, gone. They were completely eliminated. Instead, ShopFast set up a central, super secure vault. Now, a service would request the credentials it needed right at the moment it needed them, and only then. It's kind of like checking a key out of a bank's safe deposit box instead of just leaving copies lying all over the house.
And this brings us to their brilliant fourth layer. They shifted left. Now, what does that mean? It means instead of waiting until the very end of the process to check for security problems, they integrated automated scanning tools right into their development pipeline. These tools would scan the code for known vulnerabilities as it was being written. And the result? Issues were caught and fixed super early, long before they could ever become a real problem in the live system.
So, what was the result of all this work? Did it actually pay off? Well, for ShopFast, something really amazing happened. Security stopped being this roadblock, this thing that slowed everyone down. Instead, it became a business enabler, a genuine superpower that let them grow even faster, but this time safely. The ultimate test, of course, came during a massive Black Friday sales event. The platform was just getting hammered with traffic. It successfully processed over 10 million requests. The pressure was absolutely immense. And under all that pressure, they had 0 security incidents, not a single breach. The new, resilient system held up perfectly. It was the ultimate proof that their entire strategy had been a massive success.
And, beyond that huge headline win, they saw all these other benefits too. Their attack surface was way, way smaller, meaning complex compliance rules like PCI for handling credit card data suddenly became so much simpler. And maybe most importantly, their developers were actually empowered to move faster because security was just automated and built right in. It wasn't in their way anymore.
So, the ShopPass story really offers some powerful lessons for pretty much any organization trying to navigate the complexities of modern software. Let's try to distill this whole thing down into a few key takeaways you can use.
So what can we all learn from this? Well, first, security isn't some project you finish. It's a continuous journey. Second, in today's world, automation is just non-negotiable. You simply can't keep up with this stuff manually. Third, adopting a zero-trust mindset by default. That changes everything. You have to start from a position of assuming there are threats. And finally, remember, you don't have to go it alone. Partnering with experts can make all the difference and really accelerate your success.
And that really leaves us with one final question for you to think about. When it comes to your own world, is your security a brittle wall that you just hope nobody can knock down? Or is it something stronger, more flexible, a resilient force that's actually woven into the very fabric of everything you build? Because that answer, well, it could make all the difference.